First thing we're going to talk about today is setting up a new data driller and how you can actually use a new data driller in your system. And if you were with us last week, we talked a little bit about how to find your files. And the easiest way is, if you do have access to it, is the data center, which is right here. And the data center, if you're in a fairly new version, will give you a list of your files if you have access to it. There is a permission to give you access to this. And it will list the files here that you have access to. So if you want to see what's in a customer file or something into a customer file data driller, it'll tell you this is the customer master. And you can actually right click on this and browse the table. And there is the table, and you can do the usual selection criteria on that table if you want to see subsets of it. And it will also give you a list of the fields that are in the table if I expand this down and get the fields. There are, of course, two other ways to find out what's actually on a file, and that is to look at the documentation. And the document that actually has the information about where the data is located is the Technical Reference Manual. And it is under Information Guides. I think I clicked a button too fast here. Let's go back. Information Guides, and under the Technical Reference Guide, and then under the Data Dictionary. And all the file layouts are in fact under these modules. Here's again accounts receivable. The files are listed over here, and if you look, it will tell you what is in the files and what are in the different fields in those files. So the third way, the third way is to go to System Manager and go directly to the Data Dictionary itself, which is online, under Maintain Dictionary Tables, and bring up the customer file if you want, or just simply bring up a list of files and select the file you want to look at. And again, we'll look at the customer file here. And then pull down here, and you can see the field index relations and any defined triggers for that. We're primarily interested in the field information. And if you flip through this file, you'll see the fields, and some of them actually will have additional documentation in the notes of what goes into those fields. So there's 3 or 4 different ways for you to see the data and get a hold of them. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to select a file, and then actually and add a browser to the system. Okay. There are 2 ways to get to the data driller depending which version you're on. One is to go to System Manager and go to Maintain Users Data Drillers. Under the newer versions, it's actually here under Maintain Data Views. So under the older versions, it's as illustrated on the slide here. See, it's under the data driller. And the newer versions, you will go through Maintain Data Views. So right here, if I was going to do a new data view on a file, I would have already selected the file, and here I would give it a new name. So I might call this new, or how about a new driller? Okay. It's not actually going to let me do that. I'm going to have to take the spaces out of it. And I enter that, and it says it's not found. Would you like to add? And I say yes. Now there is an easier way to do this. If you know there's a driller similar to the one you want to do, you can use the Copy From key at the top and actually copy that driller in. But we're not going to do that this time. We're just simply going to add it. The other option is the Import and Export Data Driller option, and you can move data drillers between systems by using the Export and the Import function. Okay. If you want to exclude this from the standard data view list, you can click this. Give it a title, a new driller, and a description, a customer file driller. Okay. The first thing I have to do is select the table, and hopefully I've already determined what that is, figured out which table I want data out of, and I select the table. And at this point, it's going to give me the table here, and it's going to give me any related files over here. And related files are always related on a specific key. And we'll actually go through a little bit later today and look at how those relationships are set up and where they're defined in the system real briefly. If you're interested in getting a little more detail about how that works, I'm glad to show you how to get into that and get into joining these tables together. But for our example, we're just going to pull data from the customer file. We're not going to relate it to any of these other files. The sales order master, the SLSM file, the SOY mass, which is the sales order header and archive version of SOMAS, cache, ARMAST, ARY cache, the archive version of cache, and the archive version of the ARMAST file. And there are other files you could join this to, but those are the ones that are predefined in the system. We're not going to use any of those. We're just going to use this one file. So here's everything that's in the file. Now, hopefully I've gone through and already figured out which ones of these I need. We're going to do a fairly simple one. We're going to bring over the customer number, the contact, and their zip, and phone number, and maybe the city they're in. Okay? We might want to see some other information, maybe who the salesman is assigned to them, and maybe their credit limit. So I can pull whatever information I want over, and it ends up over here. Now, if I don't like the way these things are working on the screen or something, I can change it. And the way I can do that is I can select the field I want to use and click Detail. And here it'll let me do some simple things. Like one is changing the column headers to make it friendlier. Like this column header is going to be salesman. I may want that column header to actually spell out, maybe I want to put rep, or maybe I actually want to type salesman. And maybe the default width of that column isn't what I'd like it to be, and I'd like to change the default width. There are some advanced functions here where you can do some other tricks. If you click on this, these will open up to you. If you want to display the display format or the mask that displays it, if you want to change the data type as it shows, you can do those things. Okay, so we're not going to do any of those. We're just going to say OK. And I have now pretty much defined my data driller. Okay. I can hit this button, and there it is. So any data you have in the system, it's that easier to create a new driller, and then later on you can actually do reports on this driller if you want to. So I've done that. I've gone through the general. I now am selecting who is going to have access to that particular data driller. Okay. So what I've done is I've gone into this screen and I can assign who is going to have that. Now all data drillers in the system by default are assigned to the admin user when the system ships. None of the other users are going to have access to the data drillers. So you may have a situation in your company where nobody gets any data drillers at all. And that is because as the system shipped, the access was all set to the single person, the admin user. And you have to go through and give people permission to use these. And that's pretty straightforward. You can either click the All Users button and everybody will then see it. Or if you want to actually select users, you can simply go in and click and a little dot will appear next to that person and he will have access. Now here's a little hot tip if you don't want to go through this with everybody. And that is you can set up a single user or set up users a certain way and use another function that's available. Didn't want to get out of that soon, but anyway. You can go into maintain users and you can actually select the data views assigned to the admin user and synchronize those with the other users. So I can go in here and I can say synchronize, click none, click data views, and it will move all the data views to the users I click over here. So it's a quick and dirty way to get them all moved over to the other users is to go into the user file maintenance, select the data views for the, or you don't even have to select the admin user, pull down on the synchronize button, and then select which button here you want to move over. In this case, I'm just moving data views, but you could also do this with customized forms and menus, screens, hotkeys, the favorites over here. You'll see I have favorites defined in my system. All of those can be moved between users by using this synchronization function. So the easy way to maintain this is to set up one user the way you want and then synchronize his settings throughout the system. Okay. So I had a new data driller set up here. And it's all set up and I'm back in it again, back in the edit mode for here. And I can do some other things to this if I want. There are some, there's a setting here that if this was a dual file that had both a current and a history version, and we saw that earlier with SOMAST and SOYMAST, and I wanted to see all data across current and history file, I could click this button. This will not work on a joined browser or a browser that has multiple fields from different files in it, whether joined, related, whatever. It will not work. You cannot do this. It has to be a single file browser. There's also for advanced pre-processing script and stuff, primarily for programmers to do some tricks to create special files. And this is the dashboard favorite view. You guys all probably have a dashboard and don't know it. And the dashboard looks like this. Okay, it comes up and says Sage Pro Dashboard, and I do admin, and admin, just like the normal logon. And it does take a pro logon to bring this up. And what it does is it brings up a version of the business status report that does not require you to log into Pro. Okay, so if you're familiar with the business status report, this is very familiar to you, and it has the same features as the business status report. I can go in, I can click, and I can drill down on open orders. It is an abbreviated set of data, but you can choose whether or not these particular data views are going to be included on the data views for the data driller, for the dashboard, for the dashboard. And that's where you flip that button and it will be included in here. Notice we also have in this predefined, if you have Customer Connect installed, which is a simple version of kind of a CRS, Customer Relationship Management package. It basically keeps a list of your customers, your vendors, and any to-dos or messages and stuff you send to them. It keeps that, and you can actually access that information from here inside of the dashboard. But anyway, the point was that if you want to include your data driller in this particular screen, you can. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to the main screen and review real quick. Remember, if you want to change this, you just click on the three dots. It takes you to the next screen. I could add industry to this list if I wanted to. I could take something off the list if I wanted to. If you need to define a filter or you want to change the appearance, say I wanted to change the order, I want it to be not by customer number, but by company name, and then I want it to be by zip code. I can do that, and now it will be sorted that way. I can put a limiting filter, and I'll show you how to use this another way, maybe in a few minutes. Like I could say I only want to see people that are in a certain city, or the credit limit was over 0, or had a certain state or something. I could actually define separate data drillers for those things. So, and I can keep hitting this test button and see if it actually still works, so I don't mess it up too bad. Okay, so that's a brand new data driller, a very simple one, but nevertheless a brand new data driller. Okay. Okay, push the detail buttons to get that information. Okay, let's get a little fancier on the actual defining a data driller and doing some filters on it. Now this gets into a little bit more stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave this here, and it works the same way as the filter function here, but I'm going to go at it from a little bit of a different angle. Okay, I'm going to go into a company, 99, and I'm going to come in from a slightly different way of looking at the selection criteria. So I'm going to go to maintain data views, and I'm going to bring up my new data view that I just did. All right, so what we were looking at was the filter setting. Okay, and I can go into this and I can click this and I can set a filter here and I get this selection. But I can do this also at the runtime level, and there's some more utility I can actually get if I do it that way. So let's bring up this data driller right here. And there's my new data driller right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this so I can select and see customers by salesman. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on this Advanced tab, and this looks amazingly like the filter. So I'm going to follow down here and I'm going to do salesman equal to, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to say DG, AM, and LH. And I'm going to put DG. Okay. Watch this carefully. This could save you a lot of work. DG customers. Save it. Okay. Notice that I only get the DG customers. And then I click advanced again. And I say salesman equal to LH. And I change this to LH customer. Oops, mess that up a little bit. And I want to add this to filter, but I also want to remove this right here because I don't want the DG customer filtered. Okay. And I save that as LH customer. Now I have LH customers, but watch. I have saved these filter settings so that I now can show people what they want. You can do this with any data driller. A good example is I have a client that needs to look up car parts. And he has thousands and thousands of car parts in stock. So what we did is we defined data drillers by type of car, Honda, Toyota, Ford, Chevrolet, and type of part, fuel pumps, fuel system, body parts, coolant systems. So in the coolant systems we'd have radiator, water pumps, hoses, stuff like that. So we could go in and select Honda and the hoses and stuff and narrow down his searches. And then once he got the search up here, he could use the functionality of these searches or flips to flip things around and find the parts that they needed. So instead of having to look through thousands and thousands of parts, they were able to narrow down their search using this feature and just see the items they wanted to see. Okay? So advanced filters, very powerful feature, and the ability to save them is a powerful feature. Let's get one more defined. So let's say none here. Take it back to none, and I did it for, I've done it for DG, I haven't done it for AM and DA. So click this and add a filter and take salesman. I messed up. Equal to DA. Keep hitting that button a little too early here. And save that as DA customers. And I keep adding these. So I can do DA customers, DG customers, LH customers. You can also put these drillers on lookups in other places. So you can actually go into like sales order entry, and when you're entering a sales order, and you click here, you can set up these same type of filters. An AM customer, BS customer, DG customers is all of DG's customers. I want to do Bay business, boom, it's up. Very handy tools, very easy to use to customize your lookups for a particular end user and make it easier to find your data in the system. Do it on inventory parts, do it all kinds of places. There's some tricks on usage of matches and likes. If you don't use an exact equal, you can use the like function in FoxPro, and if you say it's like a certain thing, you can use the asterisk as a basically wildcard. And so if you do, F asterisk, it'll return anything that starts with in this case, a capital F and an R. If you do R, obviously it doesn't start with R, so it's going to return a false. If you do asterisk R asterisk, that's true. There is an R surrounded by characters in that, so that returns a true. So there's different ways of doing these searches, and if you trial a few of them, you can come up with some pretty creative ways to use them. Okay. No, if you go back to the actual screen and you look at, boy, there's a real echo. Yeah, that's because that's the way you do it. That's the way you do it in FoxPro when you're trying to look something up. But in the data views, when you're doing that, you don't do that. You use the like. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Sorry. You use the contains or one of these functions with a wildcard, or you use this, where you use the between functions, the in functions, things like that, or you can use wildcards within those functions. In FoxPro, it's called the like command, but you'd actually use them here, and what you would do is you would say this begins with will give you the same functionality. If you say an in like this and put a value up here, you can use the asterisk in those values. So you can say, that'd be actually an in list. I wouldn't use it there. How about if we do, well, begins with, has to begin with. About the only way you can really use them is probably the contains clause. And you can use a wildcard in that function. But that's pretty easy to use anyway. So if you're doing a lookup here and you want to see everything that ever contained an R, that's what it's going to do. If I do this, actually if I do this, it's not going to work. I don't want to do it here anyway. I'd rather do it here so you can see it easier. And if I do star R, it's not going to get any hits. But if I do R alone, what it's going to do is put the asterisks around the R. Yeah, it's not good. No customer number contains lowercase r, but it might contain uppercase R. No. Try a C or an A. There we go. Uppercase A. It contains those, so I can see those. And what it's doing here is it's actually, if I put a contains and I put a company number Inc. I don't have company, I have contact. If I do contact contains a D, it'll give me every name that has the letter D in it, whether it's in the beginning or not. D, Anderson, Goodman, wherever it is. And what it's doing is what it showed on that slide. It's doing the search using those asterisk capabilities. So when I'm using the function in this contains function, this is what it's doing. And this is probably, unless you're really into the programming and you want to do this yourself, you really probably wouldn't use this, but it's kind of an explanation of how it works. Probably just confused you with all of that. Okay, the sort, we kind of went through the sort and how it's sort down. If you click on the sort button, the three-tiered sort button, it'll give you a list of the indexes in the file, and over here you can just click on them and add them, and it'll sort down by that index. Okay, so that was the button on the maintain data drillers. Below the filter function, oops, under maintain data views, right here it was the order by, edit, click, have a list of indexes, add the ones to make it sort the way you want. Okay, that doesn't preclude you. That's the way it comes up when you first bring it up on the screen. That doesn't mean you can't change the order simply by clicking on the columns. Okay, so notice this is the order it comes up in. I defined it, but if I want to change my lookup criteria to phone, I clicked it to phone, and it's now sorted on phone number, and my lookup criteria becomes phone. Okay? And again, if I want to look for all the area codes in a certain area, I can do this and do like 415 and get all the area codes. Okay. Let's go back to the slideshow. Okay, the database is all your data. A table is what you're always working with. It's a single file or a group of data. Indexes are special files created to speed access and to tie things together. And the relational database is what this all is contained in. Let's talk a little bit about relationships. If you look at how this ties data together, so if I go into this data driller and I look at a customer file driller and I click at the drill down button here, what it's going to do is tell me which files are related. So I want to look at this one, and I see that accounts receivable open invoices is related to this customer file. So if I go in, I look at AR masked, I will have a relationship defined in the system that points me to this file and lets me relate those files. You can add additional ones to it. And what they're related on is a specific key. So if you want to add additional relationships to the system, you can do this based on a customer number or based on an invoice number. In this case, I can take the invoice header file and I could tie it to the invoice items on a customer number. But if I did that, I would get all the invoices that had the customer number here and had the customer number here. I wouldn't get an exclusive relationship. If I did it on invoice number, I would only get the invoices that related to that particular one. A better way to do it is on this side is to actually have the customer number tied to the invoice header this way and the invoice item based on invoice numbers tied this way. They're both in this file, and I can do relationships either way from that file. So if you go in and you actually down drill on the invoice file here, right here, and I go to accounts receivable invoices, you will see that I can drill down from there either to the customer file or to the invoice detail file. I click here, I can go to customer file and see information on the customer file. So I got a new, a customer, the one I just defined. Or I can go back here and drill down to the invoice detail transaction, and it drills down on the invoice number. I see this customer, I select invoice 1218, I go to AR detail and I see everything on 1218 and only 1218. So those are relations. The additional ones, if you don't see the data you want, additional ones can be added to the system if the indexes exist. It's really beyond the scope of this course. This is a cascading relationship, customer file to invoice header down to invoice items. Okay. In order for those links to work, the fields have to be exactly the same in the two files. And that's how those links can be made to work in the data driller where they come up under that blue pull down. They must be exact, and notice this is a new data driller. It's never existed in the system before, but it knows what files are related because they are defined in the data dictionary. I did not have to go through and do that. It automatically knows how to tie the files together. Okay? Let's not talk about Cartesian products. They're a disaster. Okay, here's how you tell ACPAC about a relationship, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. If you need to define a new link between two files, you go into Dictionary, Tables, and you do Relation. And in there, it will bring up the information. This is the table we're working on, ARTran. You can assign a name to the relationship. You have to give it one. We're going to call it ARTran1. And then you define the other table that's related to this and the index that it's related on. That index must have the name of the field that it's related on. This gets a little tricky, but if you see you don't have data in the system you need to get to, and you don't see how you can get to it, this is how you do it. If there isn't an index defined, you can also go into the relational file, the file maintenance, and define a new index. If there already is an index defined, you can simply go in here and add it, and you have a relationship on the go. Okay, that's kind of our advanced data driller class. Kind of give you an overview of how to define a new data driller, get the information into it, and tie it to additional information, move around in it, do filters on it. What I would suggest is you guys go in and spend some time playing with it. There's a lot of material to absorb here, and you kind of get an idea how it works. And then if you need to do additional things with data drillers, they're pretty easy to do. Even the new data drillers you define will automatically have their custom reports defined. So if we went, like we went over last week of reporting and the data drillers and stuff, you can use those features. So, and remember, anything you want to do to data drillers, you can also do to your lookups. So if you want to fix your lookups so that people have faster lookups in the system, you can do the same thing to these data views, data drillers that are here. Okay. Okay, nobody is using ProAlert, so we're going to skip the next part of the course, which is actually on robots. And ProAlert is a robot. It basically sits on a PC and does repetitive tasks. It could do things after hours. Basically, ProAlert has a library of reports or email notification events or conditions to give you, and it can tell you different things like print a report of inventory shortage, print a report of customer credit issues, do backorder reports, cache. There's a library to these routines in the system, and there actually is a third-party library available too. You basically, in order to use ProAlert, you have to set up a PC, start ProAlert running, and have it sit there and wait for an event. An event can be a time, something happening in the system, all kinds of things can be events, and then take some action based on that event. This usually requires some programming to use it. Since I don't think anybody here is using ProAlert, we are not going to spend time on defining what the events and conditions are. You know, here we got to check stock level on a daily basis. It runs at a certain time. And here's some events that could happen, end of day, end of month, whatever, timing. And there are 3 types of events: date, time, process, or process plus a date and time. And then there are 4 possible conditions you can have, and it finally ends up that it takes some action, like does a mail payable due or something. Anyway, it's a robot in the system. It's available. Here's all the possible actions that we've got predefined in the system. Send a reminder to the customers, mail payable information, whatever. I have people that are successfully using this. They're mostly using it for things like to notify them of low stock conditions, credit limit issues, things like that. Okay, there are polling events and stuff. All right, most of you guys have probably got Message Master. Message Master should be set up in your system and working. The one thing you really need to get to have a Message Master work successfully is some type of PDF writer. And currently we support 3 PDF writers in the system. And depending on which version you're on, it would be some version of Adobe, be it 7 or 8, depending on which version you're on, and create a PDF, PDF Factory and Win2 PDF. So the Acrobat Writer, or the older version of it, the Adobe Writer, or vice versa, and the PDF Factory and the Win2 PDF. And those are all PDF writers that we support. If you don't want to use a PDF writer, I suggest use HTML as the output method, if you can, for attachments. Okay, so you go in here and you click how you're going to set things off. Default method for me would probably be PDF. For previews, all is currently set to native. And on the email screen setting, Mappy, you can select how you want documents attached to outgoing documents. Text, HTML, or PDF. PDF is by far the most attractive. So what this does is this controls how you're going to get stuff out of your system through the Message Master messaging system. So each user can have their own settings. So if you have different people who want to use different settings for how they view things, how things get sent out. If you do have a fax server, you can use fax and use fax as a default. If you don't like fax, you want to use email, you can use email as default. And each user can have his own set of settings for his particular workstation. Okay. There also are custom forms. If you have one person that's sending out certain types of forms like invoices and they want to be a certain way for faxing and a different way for PDFs, so they look a little different, they're a little prettier, you can do that by defining a user custom form tied to the user configuration. So how do you control Message Master? Well, one of the ways to control it is in the method field, it has the word code. And this ties back generally to 2 fields. In the customer file, there is a field called miscellaneous code. And in the vendor file, there is a field called miscellaneous code. And if you put this code into that field, that is how that customer or vendor will be treated. So what I'm saying here is if you want all of your invoices for a customer to be sent by email, in that customer file, in the miscellaneous code field, you would put EM. On earlier versions, E, FE, and P worked. but they've done away with that. It was too imprecise and didn't seem to work very well. They're now doing FXEM and payroll. These may still work, but I wouldn't trust them. Sorry. If you want them to go out an email, put email into the customer file. If you want that vendor's purchase orders to always go out email, put EM. If they must print those, put PR. Now what happens is if you use the batch print function for sales orders, purchase orders, invoices, or any other batch print function, it will automatically split the batch up into the appropriate delivery method. So if they have email in there and the customer has a valid email address, it will just automatically take every document that he is to be sent and send it out to email. If it's PR, it will send it to the printer. If you have a fax server, you will send it to the fax. So that gives you a powerful tool to do batch printing of invoices, POs, and stuff at the end of the day or whenever you want, and print those out. The fax servers we were supporting, depending on which version, were WinFax. That no longer supports it in 7.3 and above. WinFax is no longer compatible. We have a version of Castell that works. Cheyenne works on earlier versions. FactWorks and BitWorks, apparently. BitFax still work. BitFax has now changed its name, and I can't remember the exact name of what it is. It was purchased by another company. But those are fax servers that work. Basically, any email method will work. Mappy is Outlook. Exchange will work. CCmail does work, although I doubt it's going to be supported in 7.4 and 7.5 any longer because it's pretty much gone away. It was a Novell product primarily, and nobody's using it, or very few people. The Mappy profile username, Mappy is generally what's used with Outlook or with Exchange settings, and it's mail accessing protocol, I believe is what it stands for. And it's just a standard method of sending email, and if you have this, it will automatically log on to Outlook and send an email. Okay? How do you have your documents attached? So let's take a look at how this works. If I want to send something out and I have this sent, say I want to send a report to somebody, if it was if this was actually an invoice, what it would do is it would automatically select the method of sending it to that user. But since this is not one of those, I get the option here of selecting the method. I select fax. And what it does here is it comes up with a fax interface. If this was a vendor or a customer, it would automatically have the vendor or customer information in here. I would not have to add it. But I can go in here and add the information. So I can actually put a valid email address in here. Okay. And I can send this. I can also, in the other modules, I can't do this in System Manager, but in the other modules I can select email addresses from the customer or the vendor file, and I click this button here and it automatically creates the attachment and sends the files to Outlook, and it's logged on to Outlook and it's sending it. It's giving me a sample of what it's going to look like, and notice it is now sending the document over to Outlook. So Message Masher is a handy tool. It does take a little bit of setup and playing with it to get it to work the way you want it to work. Shouldn't be too hard. Okay, any questions on Message Master? All right. One of the things that we kind of stopped at on the course last week was band-oriented report writers. Okay. All the reports in the system use the band-oriented report writer in Pro. Now, one of the big enhancements to Pro 7.4 is you can have duplicate bands. You can have double detail bands. Prior versions, you could not have double detail bands. And it adds a lot of flexibility if you need to do some detail reports that need more detail that are breaking on multiple levels. But the basics are that when you set up your reports, you define how data is going to be shown. And the most important thing is understanding what your detail level is, because this is the lowest common denominator. Let's go look at a report in AR. Okay, so let's go look at the report, the data driller that I just did a few minutes ago, a new data driller, and let's watch how it builds up a band-oriented report writer. I click here and I say custom report and I say a new report. Well, it helps if I don't go too fast. And I say add it. And I'm going to add this report. I don't need a report path, but I do need a description, a new report. Okay, and we'll save it. All right, here is my list of information. And I'm going to take those all over here. And the only really field I can kind of add up on here is credit limit. I'm going to go next. And I'm going to define groups of records. And I'm going to define them by customer number. Whoops, sorry. Customer number, or by salesman, and then my customer number. What I have done is, this actually won't give me what I want. Hang on a second. Let me pick another field. Do I have state in here? No, I don't have zip. Zip might work. I'd like to get 2 levels of splits because I want to show you how it works. We'll stick with customer number. What this will do is it'll create 3 bands basically in my report. A salesman band, a customer number band, and a detailed data band. So bands are about grouping records. I am grouping by salesman, I am grouping by customer. And now I have some grouping options. I can change how that behaves. I have some summary options, and this is the only one I'm interested in. I want to sum up credit limits by salesman, just to show you how this works. And I'm going to go next, and I'm going to hurry, so I'm just going to go next. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to preview it, and I defined the salesman band and the customer band. And all that bands are data breaks in the system. So they are just data breaks, how I arrange my data. So when you go to define a report, you need to start at the lowest level that you will define it at and roll it up. That is what band-oriented report writers are about. They work very, very well with relational database systems because they flip the way we were organizing the data with indexes back to the lowest common denominator. So it works very well to have a band-oriented report writer with a relational database system. All right, so let's go in and look at the bands a little bit. Let's look at a report that has bands in it. This is ARCUS 99 report, so let's go take a look at it. And it'll look a little different in the current version, but that's okay. Okay, and see what happens with this. Okay, print file listing. I believe it's the AR customer file right here, and I'm going to do detail. All right, so I go through this grid here, and how do I get to my report to modify it? I generate the report, and then I pull down here and I say I'm going to modify it. The standard report will come up. If there is a modified version, it will come up here. And if I want to change that, I can do organize. And I already have a report defined, so I'm just going to use the one I have defined. Okay. And I click Edit Report. And there is my band-oriented report writer. A little different, but my header band and then my company band. This is not a good example of how I want to do this. I want to get a more detailed report. So let's go back. Let's get out of here. Thought I was going a good place. You can add a field there. Gets a little tricky, but you can. Let's look at a transaction report of invoice register. It'll have lots of bands on it. Okay. Detail, or at least a couple of bands. And I'm going to do page down, generate. And I have only a standard report here, so I'm going to organize it. I'm going to add a new version of this report. I'm going to click Add here, and I'm going to get a sequence number of 10. I'm going to call it a new invoice rich. And description is a new invoice. Nothing. It's just a unique number. It just has to be a unique number. It can be one. I always do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4, or 100, 200, 300, whatever you want. Just got to be a unique number. Okay. All right. I save it. There's a little thing here. Who has the right to use this report? If you only want certain people to use the report, you can go in and click here and assign it to certain people. Otherwise, it falls to all. And you can select which companies it's used for. If you have multiple companies defined, you may want this custom report only on certain companies, and you can set that up. But that's not really important. Okay, so here we got some better bands. We got the invoice number band. Let's get this out of the way. We got the tax code band. We got some more detail. You know, we got a better report here. And so this is what band-oriented reports are about. Whoops. Click off. And here's where the bands are defined in the group expressions. And that's basically the same expression that we defined when we did the custom report. I'm not suggesting necessarily you want to go and mess with these. I have my slideshow. I think I killed my slideshow. Bring it back. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying you should go in and mess with these data groupings and stuff, but that's where they are, and that's where they can be changed and expanded and done away with in the system. If you need to define some extra bands in your report, if you need to do some more controls, you actually go into the data grouping capability here and change this, and you click on this and you can select fields. Now you asked me about adding a field. If I know I'm using a standard file here, and if I look at this one, I can see that I'm using the invoice number master file here. I know I am because it's got the information like item, invoice number. If I know the name of the field and I've gone before and looked it up, yes, I can add a field here. And here's what you do, is you go into this field function and you put it where you want it. And you give it a name. The name would be company. So I've just added the company name to here. Now that may not work. It may turn out that that is not a defined, boy, I really messed that up. But it's a big long field and I don't want it to be that long. Okay, this may work actually fine, and maybe this is someplace else on this report and it already knows about it. That's too small. Okay, so I've added the company name there under the customer, and it apparently knew it was a big field and it knew about it. Now all I have to do to save that is hit Control W. But what you really can do, and what's really easy to do on these reports, is move stuff around or make stuff bigger or smaller. A lot of times there's stuff on reports you won't ever use, like there's multi-currency information. This information here would only be used if you were running a multi-currency version of the report, I think. I'm not sure about that one. That's kind of weird. But I don't think they're going to be used in most cases, and you might be able to remove those. And you can expand and stretch fields. If the PO number is not big enough on this, and it is bigger in the system, you can go in and stretch it and make it bigger. Control W will save this. One of the beautiful things is you can't screw this up, guys. There's no way. Because after I save it, I have a new report right here. Or wherever I put that one, ARARID. Sorry, I got it someplace else in the system. I don't know where I put it. But I got a new report, and I can delete it, but the master report is never changed. So if you mess this up real bad, you just go in and delete it. You just click delete, take it out, do a new sequence number, and start over and get it done the way you want. So you can go in and play with it. You can go, there's the one I did. You can go in and change things, and if you don't like it when you're done, you can just click delete. So what's it going to look like? What's this report going to, is this report going to work? Well, you know, I don't really know, but we'll try it. So let's exit out of here. And we'll try to preview it, and it'll probably blow up. I predict it crashes. It did. Go ahead. Does somebody have a question? Yes. 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 Yeah. It kind of depends on the report. Basically, you have to have some FoxPro knowledge to do it. So if I do F9 right here, and I've got my workstation set up for debugging mode. So if I go in here and I do F9 and I go up to this FoxPro window and I set view on, I can see which file it's using right here. It's using a temp file, which is a bad sign. Oops, that was a bad thing to do. Let me escape out of that. Let's do browse normal instead of browse last. So it's built a temp file, and I'm actually on a SQL version of the database, so I only get one record at a time. But I can see the file up there. There's more records in the file, but the view doesn't give them to you. And so I can flip through the file and see what I have available to me. And if you'll notice, the customer name is not in this, and that's why it blew up when I tried to run it. I could have added any one of these other fields that were there. To get this data out, if you're on the SQL version, is a little trickier. If you're not on the SQL version, on the FoxPro version, you can literally at this point copy it to Excel. Not hard to do at all. But it requires a little bit more expertise to do that. The data drillers are a little easier. The problem with the report you're talking about is that data only exists when that report is run. Okay? So when I go into a report that's fairly complex like this, and I go into, and I have a report that the data is in a temp file and only exists at the time I run the report, it's a little more difficult to get to it. If it's data that's always available and I can see it, say in the data center here, I know it's in the master files and I know it's there, then I can do a data driller on it and go in and do my own custom reports very easily and move those around. Pardon? Is it static data, or is it data that's created at the time the report's run? Then the data driller will work. I mean, anything that any files that exist all the time are the data is going to be there and you can report on it. So I did a custom report here. Did I save it? Yes, I did. So that custom report's there. See, I can click the export button and send it out. The truth, actually, that's not true. If you, in this particular case, if I click the export button, it exports this, not the custom report. That is a little confusing there, but that will export this file as is, not the custom report. If I want to do the custom report, I wanted to get it out. Let's not do that. Let's do this. Select the custom report. I go to custom reports. I click edit report. Here I can change the way that report works, how it looks, and what's going on with it. So again, if I don't like this report, hey, say I want to get rid of this band or something, I can just move the the customer number up to there. I could shorten this band. If I want to get real fancy, I can go up here. Data grouping. Take that data group completely out. It won't let me take it out unless I get rid of some stuff. It did. It took it out. Okay. It said not enough stuff was in it. So I just did it. I just completely did away with a break line there, and then I can start rearranging this to be contact, customer number, contact, zip, phone, city, and I could make this single line, and I can shorten this report. This is going to be really ugly, and I could move this over here, move that up there. Actually, it's over here. Move the phone number over, get the city over where I want it, which is someplace over here, and then shorten that up. And if I wanted to see what this was going to look like, this is probably going to blow up. No, it didn't blow up. It's got an overlap, but it didn't blow up. And I can see that I've shortened the report down, cut a line out of it, and rearranged everything to a single line report. And then I can make it a little smaller. I can go in and just keep shrinking this up until I get it smaller. My credit limit's getting in my way, but anyway. you can see that it's fairly easy to change your reports and get some custom reports done in a big hurry using the data driller. So you can go in and take that file that has that information in it and put it in a data driller and then go and do custom reports on it. Yeah, it's all password protected. Also, if you'll notice, there's a modify in the data drillers. There's a modify data driller function by user, so you can specify which users have the right to modify and which users don't have the right to modify a particular data driller. Okay. Okay. This is about adding labels and text. Basically, you can click on it and add text. It's like a word processor, and that's the label function. Pictures can be added into reports if you want. If you'll notice on some of our new things that we've recently done on the invoices and stuff, we give you the ability to print in 7.4 little pictures of your inventory items. If you have the inventory items pictures defined, it will print little thumbnails of them on invoices and sales orders so your customers can see pictures of what they bought. It's so cute. So you can add picture fields directly into report. Okay. Little trick here. This is what I was talking about temporary file. It doesn't always use the alias. There is a trick here about pointing to the file. If you find that the field you need is not on the report, if you sometimes can define the alias, and this gets a little more complicated, then you can use the alias to define the name. So I don't know if you can see that, but here the alias for customer, and if I had done this on the report we were just using, it probably would have worked. If I had put A_ARCust -arrow our company instead of just putting company, then it probably would have worked. Because I would have said, I understand that information is not in the temp file we're using for the report. It's in a related file called A_ARCust. Now that's simply the ARCust file. That's just a little bit about getting into advanced use of data and, you know, and being able to define it that way. So that's called an alias, and the alias for the AR customer file is always A_ARCust. The AR master would be A_AR mast, and then you point to the data piece you want. If you want to get into this a little bit more, I'll get into it after class. Okay, here's how the aliases are normally created. AR customer alias is A_ARCust, AR tran alias A_ARTran, AR mast. This is a little trick. If it doesn't work in the report, you can try this trick. Okay, that's the thing I just did with the F9. So, little thing with the F9 to go in and take a look. Kind of running out of way over time here. Okay, there's some setup switches. If anyone wants to go through the setup switches, I'll be glad to go through them after class and come back to this slide. This is slide 162. This is how you set up your workstation to do FoxPro debugging and to get to data. You probably already have a workstation set up this way because we did your conversion on it. Okay, I'm going to blow through this. Okay, and we're not going to discuss data types. Okay, this no longer applies. This was a problem in earlier versions where date fields were not properly defined. We're now using fully qualified date fields. Okay. Okay, there's some. You can do some mask and things on field. You also see this in some of the setups. This expression builder will allow you to go in and set masks, define things, and determine how things print on reports. Just go in and play with it a little bit. Calculated fields can actually be done fairly easily. In the expression field, you can actually take math fields and redefine them and type them in and actually get them to work. Okay, I'm not going to cover report letter. I went over break control. Pretty simple. Okay. Remember, when you're moving things around on a report, you can drag them with the mouse. I don't really like that. I like to mark things with the mouse and use the arrow keys to move them because it's more precise. A lot of times when you drag something with the mouse, you tend to have a tough time getting it in position. If you use the arrow keys after you've selected it, it's much easier to move. And remember, if you mess up your report dinking with it, there's a couple of things you can do. You can hit escape and get completely out. It won't save it. You can hit save, Control W and save it, and then later on you can just go in and delete that report out of the system. The original report, the original form, is never altered. Now that's not true with custom reports. If you do custom reports in the data driller, yeah, if you change it, it's changed. But in the forms that come with the file, the standard things, they are never changed. You just make a copy of them and work off the copy. Okay? Delete and recreate. Okay. FoxPro will assign printers directly to a report. When you exit out, you'll get a message saying, do you want to always print to this printer? The answer is normally no, but there are cases where you're assigning a specific printer, like to a dot matrix unit or something like that, where you do want to assign it to a specific printer, and you have to get the report writer, the report drivers and everything to match up to get those to work correctly on those kind of printers. Okay, I'm not going to cover this because it's really getting way too technical. All right, now the last question here today is, can anyone identify this man? Oh, I'm so disappointed. No guesses? This is actually the lead programmer on Pro Series. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's Luca Pacioli. He invented accounting. Actually, he didn't actually invent accounting. He actually just wrote the book about it. Double entry bookkeeping was invented in Venice in the Middle Ages. It sort of existed for years and years, but no one had actually sat down and put it all into a book. And Luca wrote the first accounting principles book. So he's the father of accounting. And he was a monk. And anyway, you've probably heard of a few years ago, there was an accounting package on the market called Pacioli. So anyway, any questions today? Everyone's asleep. This gets a little technical and I do rush through it. I kind of want to give you an overview. The best way to get this is to actually go in and play with the things that I've shown you and actually have some time working with them. If you don't, you're really not going to get this stuff. It's just stuff you got to go play with and fail and know that you can't really do any damage to the system playing with it and trying to do your own stuff in here. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, if you start going into modifying the relationships, you can do some screwy things, but as long as you don't undo the stuff that's there, it's really not going to cause any damage. If you click on the relationship and it's bogus, you may get an error. It'll put it in the error log. That's a very valuable little tool. I don't know if you guys know that a lot of things you do in the system get logged. Like if you go in here and you look at System Manager, if you go in and you make a mistake or something in the system or define something and it generates an error, there's an SYEE file. SYEE right here. There's a file in here that shows what the error was, and it shows, you know, who did it, what time they did it. It shows what happened, and there's a lot of detail in here about exactly what was going on at the time. All the memory variables get dumped. So we know pretty much what was going on with the system. So, you know, other than generating an error in here, there's really not a lot of consequences. There's a write error file, this SYET log. I think it's ET. Anyway, there's another log. I can't remember. That's not it. But there's another log that records every write error in the system. If there's a write error where the system fails to write data, it keeps track of it. There's a lot of information. The session file keeps track of everybody every time you go in and do anything that affects accounting. It keeps track of the sessions and who did them. And so there's lots of information in the file that gets logged. There's also a lot of information that doesn't get logged unless you turn on certain settings, like the audit logging settings. If you turn on the audit logging settings, we can actually, we'll actually keep before and after images of changes to master files. So if somebody goes in and changes data in a master file, we can log it. The penalty is you get a tremendous amount of data recorded in your system, and it does slow down the system as it's working. So there are good sides and bad sides to doing that. Okay. This is kind of a strange class because it's kind of a catch-all of all the other stuff that we did. And it really doesn't, it's kind of like the follow-up to last week's class on the data drillers and the follow-up to the report writer class on the other information. And so it kind of catches the details that go a little bit beyond the basics that I covered in those sessions. So if you didn't really get those sessions, you probably won't get a lot in this session. So are there any questions specifically on the material I covered today? Okay, let's stop this then. There will be movies available later. Well, okay, let's stop this. Can't get to it. It's hidden behind the slideshow. Let's stop the slideshow. Yeah, I think the format's going to change. The one thing that's real important to me is to get them down to an hour. I want to start knocking everything down to an hour, and I probably want to do them on a pretty regular basis.